The whole world is ill. You might say it's sick. Many people, me included, can feel it. The heat, the nausea, the inflammation. It manifests, this sickness, in perpetual war, loss of freedom, censorship, the contempt shown by the few so-called powerful towards the many, ceaseless propaganda, cancellation of national borders, an almost endless list of symptoms. I'm Neil Oliver, and this is GBN Originals. Most recently, it has seen the sickness, people given longer sentences in prison for things they've posted on social media, longer sentences than those handed down to people who've raped children. People face jail for protesting, which might suit you today when you don't agree with the protesters or the protest. But what happens when the day comes and you want to protest a wrong? What then? People get ill when their immune systems fail them. That which could and should be fighting infection and holding sickness at bay has been made weak. Our country's immune system, Britain's immune system, has been trial by jury. Trial by jury is democracy in action. Trial by trial, in real time. And when I say has been, I mean has been, because it's being taken away, our immune system, right before our eyes.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now,
voting in elections doth not a democracy make. Voting in elections is a confidence trick. As a friend of mine put it, quote, voting in elections for representatives to enact a raft of policies, as opposed to voting for representatives who can be trusted to uphold the Constitution, is really no more than mob rule. Close quote. An evolutionary biologist friend of mine has described the body's immune system as being like the Pacific Ocean in the early days of its exploration by navigators, which is to say, of unknown depth and extent, home to goodness knew what. Those navigators were like insects on the surface of that vastness, taking their lives in their hands in the face of powers barely imagined. Mostly out of sight and out of mind, moves are being made by the so-called establishment of this country, mostly to do away with our immune system altogether. Last month, former Lord Justice Sir Brian Levison recommended a huge increase in the number of trials taking place without a jury. Even before his recommendations, only something like 1% of trials are considered by a jury. Levison's recommendations might be described as the last nail. Someone bring a hammer and nail this coffin shut, you might say. That same biologist friend of mine said interfering, tinkering with the vast, largely uncharted ocean of the human immune system was a dangerous game to play. What is being pushed in relation to the ancient right of trial by jury is much worse. It's the suggestion that the living body of Britain, the people of Britain, should be denied their immune system altogether. I say this because it's the jury, 12 people in England and Wales, 15 in Scotland, that working as the community's immune system prevents runaway disease and infection in the body of the people. If you want to know what I think our so-called establishment, being the monarchy, the aristocracy, the civil service, the judiciary, the mainstream media, the church, academia, I see that as nothing but a set of opportunist infections. I first learned the term opportunist infection in relation to the phenomenon we learned to call AIDS. People didn't die of AIDS as such. Rather, their immune systems were so weakened by AIDS that they died of infections a healthy immune system would have held at bay. Cancer is mostly held at bay by a healthy, functioning immune system. Where the immune system is compromised, the cancer cells reproduce themselves unchecked, metastasizing, the cancer spreading from its point of origin in the body to one organ after another. When you mention trial by jury, most people's eyes just glaze over. The subject sounds dry and dull. I tell you now, though, that the subject of trial by jury has been made to sound dry and dull by those who would prefer that when it came to the law under which we're supposed to live, that we just don't bother our pretty little heads with any of it. What's trial by jury got to do with anything, goes the unspoken question. The answer to that question is that trial by jury, and only trial by jury, empowers a little group of people, what Sir Patrick Devlin in 1956 described as a little parliament, to judge not just the guilt or innocence of the accused, but the very justice of the legislation that has been used to bring the accused to trial in the first place. Any administration, and I use the word deliberately, in place of government. In a democracy, the people govern themselves, and elected representatives do more than administer the people's wishes. Any administration will, given half a chance, write and pass legislation that gives it total, and I do mean totalitarian, control. By those means, the people, having no say in the rightness and justice of the laws by which they're supposed to live, by those means are the people led to that dread place where orders come down from above and where people are commanded to ignore what their own consciences might be telling them, what their own innate morality is telling them, and simply to obey the order. I shouldn't have to remind anyone, least of all members of the establishment, the judiciary especially, that the defence of only obeying orders was supposedly done away with as part of the judgment of the Nuremberg trials at the end of World War II. I shouldn't have to remind anyone, but trial by jury sounds dry and dull, doesn't it? To prevent that hellish state of affairs, which is only obeying orders, which is textbook despotism in which an administration makes itself all-powerful and beyond challenge, and in which the people are made slaves, we are supposed by ancient right to have the protection made of trial by jury. Trial by jury empowers that little parliament to decide if any given piece of legislation has the right to exist at all. Consider this scenario. Imagine an administration, a government if you will, passes legislation making it illegal for a man to wear green trousers on a Friday. A man is duly brought to court, accused of breaching the legislation. The evidence is put before the jury. Among other things, CCTV, clearly showing the accused in green trousers, in footage, date stamped as a Friday. Furthermore, the man admits that he did indeed wear green trousers on a Friday. The evidence makes plain the man has broken the green trousers law. The jury, however, fully understanding the evidence, nonetheless declares the man is innocent. They've considered the matter, each man and woman using only his or her own conscience, and decided unanimously that the man is innocent. And furthermore, and this is the really important bit, furthermore, that the green trousers legislation is nonsense and should be disregarded. In point of fact, trial by jury, as originally instituted, had no truck whatever with majority. On the contrary, a real trial by jury required only one juror of 12 or 15 or whatever to return a not guilty verdict. And then that was the verdict of the whole jury, because majority is mob rule, remember? The fact is that for centuries, literally centuries, the so-called establishment has been busily and slyly whittling away at trial by jury, which is to say, busily and slyly whittling away at the people's immune system, the ancient system set in place long ago by wiser, more benevolent heads than theirs, specifically to protect the people from despotism. By now, we have the abomination of majority verdicts. We have the abomination of magistrates' courts. Most insidious of all, we have juries browbeaten by the notion, the egregious notion, that they should submit to the guidance of the judge. In this instance, everyone must be reminded that the judge is an employee of the very establishment that wrote the legislation and wishes at all times to get its own way. You hear people say that here in Britain we don't have a written constitution. Anyone making reference to the essential importance of Magna Carta, which is to say Magna Carta 1215, accept no imitations. Anyone even mentioning Magna Carta is quickly derided as a nut and a crank flogging a dead horse. But I say that even if that were true, and it isn't, but even if that were true, that there's no written constitution, down deep where it matters, decent and reasonable people know what's right and true, with or without a constitution, written or otherwise. When Magna Carta was sealed by King John in 1215, it wasn't saying anything new. It was simply restating fundamental truth that already by 1215 was old beyond the reach of memory. We don't have democracy in this country, and we feel it, and it makes us sick. The same friend who gave me the line about voting in elections being little different than mob rule also told me, quote, one of the complaints set out in the American Declaration of Independence of 1776 was that the British Crown was depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. The so-called establishment of today has all but destroyed what serves as our immune system. With smiles on their faces and a superior look, their myrmidons presume to tell us this loss is for the common good, don't they always? If you think the subject of trial by jury is dull, far less irrelevant, then I'm here to tell you that you're dangerously wrong. Freedom of speech is holy. Freedom to do what you want with your own money is holy. Right to privacy is holy. Challenge to despotism, up to and including its overthrow, is not just our right, but the living, breathing obligation of every honest man and woman. Trial by jury, by which we, the people, decide the justice or not of legislation, is our only defence against tyranny. It's our only defence, our immune system against the cancer of that tyranny. But it's also the only defence we need. Stand up and say so.